All right, all right. Welcome, everybody. Excited to have you all here. Super excited to have this live stream. We are back with another live stream. We have amazing guests today, and we'll do quick introductions. Mac, if you want to start, and then we'll go Mark and then Savo.
Most definitely. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday before Memorial Day here in the States. Hope everybody's got some exciting weekend plans. Mac here, co-founder, chief product officer. I spend most of my time leading a lot of the front-end development on the desktop app for Pieces for developers. So we've got some exciting updates. Excited to chat with you all today and hand it off to my colleague, Mark.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Excited to be here. Thanks, Mason. Yeah, I'm the CTO here at Pieces, and I mainly manage and write a lot of the code for Pieces OS, as well as I have the pleasure to work closely with Mac on the product team, as well too with the ML team. So yeah, glad to be here. Thanks, Mason.
Cool. And I guess last but not least, myself. Happy Friday, everyone. Savo here. I am the CEO and a technical co-founder at Pieces. But yeah, really excited about what we got going on today. From a super high level, I think there's all types of stuff in the AI space that we can start touching on. Big week from Google I/O, big week from Microsoft Build, even big week from OpenAI. So really exciting, quick recap on some of that. And then I would say big, infinite week for Pieces. We are just absolutely churning right now. We've got some crazy stuff coming out on June 20th, along with our Series A announcement. So definitely do a little bit of demo here, maybe give people a sneak peek around the future of Pieces, both for June, July, and also August. And yeah, we'll get into it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks everybody. And then I'll do a side intro. Hi everybody, Mason. You've probably seen me in the community. If not, Discord, I'm always in there. Software engineer. I work a lot with, our developer relations team, as well as a lot in open source. So trying to get that up and running, but really excited to be here and excited to talk today. And of course, if you have any questions or, anything at all, please feel free to comment. We will be answering questions, throughout the stream, but definitely at the end. And so don't feel a need to wait until the very end to ask. We're always willing to answer. So awesome. Yeah, obviously Savo said a lot going on in AI. It seems like everybody has this kind of event right at the same time. And then everybody's trying to catch up on the latest and greatest, whether it's hardware to software to the latest LLMs. But we're really excited to share what we've been working on. And like Savo said, going up to that June 20th date, really excited about a product hunt launch then. So definitely stay tuned for that. But without further ado, Savo, if you want to kind of give us like a landscape view at just AI, I know a lot has been happening lately, but kind of how we play into that as well, and then going forward where we kind of see it going.
Yeah, I would say at large, everyone is starting to think about like really, really helpful implications of AI, especially like when it comes to consumer devices, how we, fundamentally interact with the digital world, right? Through our laptop screens, through our phones, things like that. And how we naturally interact with it, right? How do we express what we're looking for, just as a human would express it, right? And then how do we have that expressed back to us in, a readable form factor? And of course, all the rave is large language models, vision language models, multimodal models, things like that. How can you use them? How can you build a product on them that's like cost effective, not going to break the bank? And like, what are the implications of these models? So I would say, a couple of years ago when we started out, we were making big bets on on-device models. And I think everyone else is also starting to make big bets on on-device models, getting closer to the operating system, understanding larger context in a more horizontal capacity, in addition to just like where these things are actually valuable. And I think if you look at, Google, they just released Gemini Fast or Flash, I think it is. That's a model that is, again, supposed to be cost effective. It is a cloud model, but They are thinking about like, how do these large language models keep up with, what you're trying to access, right? The information rate that we naturally think at. You've got OpenAI, which moved into the desktop space for Mac OS, which is pretty interesting. That's kind of a nod in our direction that, hey, look, there's a bunch of really valuable data right here on the operating system that actually informs the context of these models and informs, what you're actually trying to do in that moment. And we'll talk about that. You see Apple just released the M4. So everyone's in a race right now to build the best, kind of neural, code unit or neural core or whatever. So that's great for us as well. Even if you never updated Pieces again, you'd probably have a faster version of Pieces in the next set of hardware out there. But also Windows is trying to keep up. They just released the NPU vision and some new chips. So that's going to be really fun for us to target Windows ARM devices. RIP Nathan, if he's listening. He's our CI/CD guy. And so it's just like all types of stuff going on. And so, where do we sit, at the center of all this? And I think you have a lot of the flashy announcements and everything like that, and then you don't hear about it for like months, right? And so there's a lot of hype, a lot of talk, and maybe not so much walk. And so, where we are is we're moving as fast as we possibly can. We've got kind of one of the first and only live context applications out there in the world across Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, which we'll demo today. But we'll also talk about where we're going, right? And everyone's super focused on Copilot chats right now, but I don't think it is. I think Copilot chats are a naive implementation and a naive leveraging of these technologies. I'll leave it there. We'll do some sneak peeks of what I actually mean by that in the future. But to give it a summary, we think you should type less. We think you shouldn't have to ask, you shouldn't have to type, and we'll get there. And you shouldn't even have to talk, right? You really shouldn't have to do anything, and it's going to give you what you're looking for. So, hopefully that sums up some of the crazy stuff. I'm sure we can share some links in the description to all the announcements, including our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way of describing how we kind of had this first adoption wave with ChatGPT, where it was extremely, chat-like interface, where it's a lot of manual, you're adding, back then you couldn't even add context or anything around it, but you're asking questions, you have to kind of guide it through. Now we've seen this evolution where maybe, you are able to ground a model in certain types of information, and then you can ask and get a more like detailed answer back. But now, obviously, going forward, we're kind of going, you don't even have to touch your keyboard. That blows my mind, how fast the evolution of it is, especially when you look at the hardware side as well, which is absolutely blown up. But I'd love to take a deeper dive. I know we talked a little bit about live context and this first ever in the world across all the major OSs. Being able to capture real time what you're doing and be able to process that. It's a lot for, even me to kind of understand. So maybe we can take a deep dive, maybe a step back into that and just talk about where we kind of came from looking at a feature perspective, but also why it's important to have that in our product.
Yeah, I'll kind of just add a general thing, and then I'll tap Mark and Mac to get into some details. But Mason, as you mentioned there, the goal of what we're doing at Pieces is to understand things at large, right? Understand the most horizontal context. However, the challenge with understanding this kind of broad spectrum of context across all the tools that you're using across your entire operating system is what is related. Right? What is relevant based on your research in the browser, to the work that you're doing in your IDE, to the conversations that you're having inside of GChat, Slack, or Teams. And, our big focus is not on remembering everything, but really remembering the important things, right? And also not about remembering them, but anticipating the probability that you or someone on your team will need them in the future, right? Kind of like how the human brain works. It doesn't remember every single detail of every day. And if it does, I feel really, really sorry for folks with that level of memory, because it's madness, right? And so, the goal is, what are the focal points? What needs to be triangulated? What's actually relevant over a long period of time, and from many, many perspectives, right? And so, Mark, maybe you want to talk about the work we've done to build these on-device algorithms to identify what's related to what, to embed things, to find things, and some of the things that we're doing to make this thing real time, performant, and secure and private. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Sava, for that intro. I think there's a couple different components, and there's many different challenges that kind of go into this. But some of the biggest ones, like kind of start out with like the comparison engine. So with that, there's a lot of different embeddings and different choices that we can go with. And it kind of just goes from use case to use case. But being able to select what you want to use in some of those is definitely like a big challenge, because you always have the trade-off between, how fast is this going to be, but also how accurate the comparison is going to be. So making those choices and being able to say, hey, like this is going to be a smaller body of text. So maybe what we can do is we can switch to use a different embedding that's going to be a lot more accurate. But another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that, even before, is just tapping into Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, all these on-device models that are shipped natively with your operating system that enable us to be able to move so quickly without having to develop every single thing ourselves, but then just tapping onto a lot of these native pieces, leveraging whatever sort of comparison engine that we want to choose there. And then, that's highly contextualized by a couple different things. So Savo mentioned the proactive nature, but what's currently live right now, and we could go in depth on that as well. It's currently in development, but for now, what I'll do is I'll actually just stay on the topic of the live context. So it's highly contextualized, not only on what you've currently done over the last, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes or so on, but could be expanded to be even further. But it's actually, given the question that you're asking, and then running the comparison based on that. And then also to utilizing a lot of what's captured, not only via live context, but also to captured via any sort of context that you were to provide as well, whether it be previous messages within that conversation, or also to any sort of files or fragments that you've also provided to the context or the Copilot that's used in used with everything. And all of that is highly relevant. But then again, you also have that challenge of now, given that massive amount of context, what are those relevant bits? Because there is so much noise. So utilizing this comparison engine to kind of run that stuff. And I also don't know how deep we want to go on that, but I'll leave it with that and let you kind of take it away, Savo.
I was just going to add, to that, Mark, at a very high level, you kind of have like context number one, which is at the OS, right? And so that's going to provide XYZ amounts of context. And then you have these integrations as well. And that's what Mark's talking about. So what is a snapshot from the browser and what's a snapshot from the IDE, right? VS Code or Visual Studio or IntelliJ. And basically, like, can we triangulate those context snapshots, right? And then from there, there's all types of stuff. So Mark kind of alluded to it, but Pieces right now is in a long-term capacity, remembering these relevant bits of context in a more general sense, but in a short-term capacity, it's remember these context in a more detailed sense, right? And so even the long-term sense, we don't want to store everything you've ever done, for infinity, right? So it's like, how do we roll that up? How do we compress that down into, statements that accurately represent that context at that moment in time, and then in the future be able to rebuild that, right? So Mark's talking about, a whole bunch of stuff where we're saving it, we're processing it, we're compressing it, we're indexing it, both for long-term recall, but also short-term recall, or retrieval augmented generation, if you will. And we're doing this without a large language model. I think it's really important to note that imagine you're sending all of this data out to a large language model all the time. Well, number one, that's not really great for privacy and security, right? Especially if you're dealing with technical materials. But number two, you're going to break the bank, right? And so we're seeing all these companies that are AI-based companies leveraging specifically, an external provider like OpenAI or Google, but their margins are no longer an 80% SaaS, business margins. Their margins are like a 40% SaaS business margin. So there's real challenges around how do we make this thing performant, secure, and private, but also cost effective, right? So that's kind of what Mark is implying there by doing all this stuff on device. That's our considerations.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that too, Savo. Another couple things that are like that we've done to also ensure that everything's private and secure is that we have algorithms that run on device that will also go ahead and filter anything that's even remotely close to being sensitive and mask them. So hey, if you do decide to opt into some of these cloud LLMs, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mask anything that even is remotely sensitive, so that we're not feeding any sort of like sensitive data if you opt into it to any sort of these LLMs. But that being said too, we still have a little bit of work to go, but we can absolutely run even that secondary LLM call completely offline. So then at that point, then nothing's ever leaving your device, and you can just operate everything offline.
Yeah, very, very excited about the Phi 3, the Llama 3, the Gemma models. There's even a new 5 billion parameter vision processing model, Mark, that you showed me last night called Poly Gemma, which is going to be really cool for some of our multimodality stuff. But we'll kick it over to Mac, and Mac's going to get the biggest highlight because everything you're going to see here is a lot of Mac's work of what it actually ends up being for the end user. But Mac, any comments on making this thing beautiful for the end user, figuring out what to display to them and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the biggest thing for me that excites me the most is, and I'll put this kind of in the context of what we're seeing out there in the wild, is we're seeing a lot of siloed sort of copilots, siloed AI experiences. You've got GitHub Copilot, you've got things coming out from Google, you've got OpenAI. They're creating a lot of silos. You've got infinite amount of these silos happening. What I love about Pieces and our approach to the live context, and you mentioned it earlier, Savo, but the horizontal nature of it is super, super powerful. And so it's able to cross-reference a lot of this information that, in one-off applications might exist in a silo. In our case, it doesn't, right? If it's at your operating system, it's anywhere in the web, wherever you are, we're able to start to leverage some of that context for you. And what's nice about that is the approach has been really beneficial to us from the perspective of mitigating like the technical debt, right? And so we don't have to go and build hundreds of integrations or build compliance with every single website out there in the world. Is our approach has sort of circumvented all of that in a way that you gain access to everything with really one install, essentially. And so, I don't know if we wanted to move into sort of a demo motion. You guys let me know, but that's one thing that like really, really excites me about our approach to live context.
Nice. Yeah, Mason, I don't know if you have anything to add, but we get to show and tell time. We talk about
I wanted to quickly note, I know we've been talking about kind of going forward, everything, getting away from the silo, being able to run everything on device. But I wanted to bring up kind of this big movement of, bringing all these brand new NPUs on device. It seems like every, Microsoft Build talked about it. Google I/O talked about it. They're all building these new PCs around being able to run on device local models. And obviously we've been on that train for quite a while. And I wanted to know, just coming from that perspective of, buying in very early on that to now you kind of see it more or less coming to fruition. Where do you see that like kind of next step from a hardware standpoint, as far as like the ability for, everyone to run a local model, all the way down to the mobile device? Because obviously there's still constraints there.
Yeah, I think two things. Number one, that's going to be a hard sell and a long uptake period for everyone to get, the M4s, the M3. I mean, even me, I got a laptop. I'm on an M2 MacBook Air. So you'll get I don't have a crazy device at all, right? It's like pretty consumer facing device. So it's going to take at least 2 years, 3 years. And if you think about like everyone who buys a new device, right? Like it's maybe going to be 1%, 2% of people out there that have like new Windows devices with these MPUs. You even got the whole supply chain from like Qualcomm and all the other providers that they're still working on that stuff. Even Intel, right? They've got all this new stuff for x86 architectures to kind of reinvigorate that. And that's still just very, very deep in the pipeline. But that said, I was on a call yesterday with a user. He was in Kenya, and he was on an 8 GB Windows 10 device or whatever else, and he used live context, and it blew his mind. He was like verbatim, like, I'm going to use this every day for the rest of my life. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But that's just such a testament towards our efforts around building high performance algorithms that can run on devices today, right? Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. And another testament towards this kind of like, back to the OS level movement that's going on is like Kotlin just released Kotlin 2.0, and it's a multi-platform language, right? So its compilation targets are DLLs, SO files, ARM64, and then x86, 64, WebAssembly, and JavaScript, which is exactly why we picked Dart in the early days, right? Because it has all those compilation targets. So I would say that we're just very far ahead because we've been solving problems with the highest level of constraints. Whereas like everyone else, if they're going to have to retroactively fix their business model, or if they're going to try and add more performant real-time features, they're going to have to catch up, right? So I'm pretty excited about a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I am super excited, obviously. And I think it's time to show people
Cool.
just what we're talking about here. So Savo, if you wanna kind of take over.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I will give everyone a warning. This morning, ChatGPT 4.0 is a little sleepy, so we'll see how this demo goes. It might take a second. I'd
Awesome.
rather it finish and get it right rather than not finish, but bear with us. So basically, here I am in the Pieces desktop app, and I have this thing called Live Context on. Really quickly, if you basically are updated to the latest of Pieces OS and Pieces 4 developers, you can go to the settings, and I'll just show you where all this is located. But if you click on machine learning, you'll see kind of this enrichment mode where you can use on-device or cloud models. And then you have this thing called the Workstream Pattern Engine, where you can turn this on. You can obviously pause it if you'd like to. You can clear your Workstream data, whatever that looks like. But then what that means is, with the Workstream Pattern Engine on, I can go over and I can start a new Copilot chat. And this Copilot chat understands everything that's just across my OS in real time. So you can ask it questions that are kind of time relevant. So with keywords of recently, where did I recently leave off with my work? Or, earlier, who was I collaborating with earlier in the day, or whatever else. And I'll show you very simply how this goes. So first and foremost, we have a tool like GChat, for example, and I can minimize this, but we've got the infrastructure stand up, and this is where I like to start my day. I know Mark starts his day here as well, but it's kind of just an overview of what people are up to, right? Just a quick snapshot. And I'm scrolling this and I'm reading this, but Pieces is also doing the same here, right? So I can go ahead and open up Pieces, and I can say, give me a summary from infrastructure. If I can spell infra stand up, oh my gosh, in GChat of what everyone is up to today. And I'll just ask it a question. And I'm using like abbreviations because I always forget how to spell anything on live demos. So either way, bear with me. But right here, it's going and it's saying, this is what Bishoy's up to. This is what Mark's up to. This is what Robert's up to. Just a high level. And it actually knows that I've been working with Mark, Robert, and Bishoy a lot. So it's probably prioritizing those profiles. And also, I will say, in a next release, things like this issue will actually be hyperlinked. So around that June 20th time, we're doing a bunch of post-processing to actually make sure the links that we're picking up on or the links that we're identifying are actually inside of this response. But right there, that's a super simple example of, Pieces understanding what I was just researching and catching up on, and then, being able to output that. This is also really powerful when it comes to research and problem solving workflows. So if I'm in the browser and I'm looking at an open source package like pub.dev, one that we put together, runtime native semaphores, right? So we can see I published this a little bit ago, and I can just read this documentation And, I'm not, this is just exactly how I would give it an overview, right? I'm not scrolling unnaturally or anything like that. I'm just like, okay, this is pretty interesting. We've got some APIs and so on. And then, maybe I want to use this or maybe I move on. But if you go back to Pieces, it has a pretty good understanding of what that was inside of its cache. So I can say, what was I just researching in Chrome related to semaphores? And I'll just ask it this question. Basically give me a summary or, give me a refresher here. And notice I'm using keywords like just, right? Which is like, Pieces is interpreting that as like, pretty recent. I could also say, what was I researching a couple days ago related to semaphores? But right here, it's going to give me an overview. Again, it has the runtime native semaphores package. It knows exactly what we're doing. It's got some API references, implementation details, all that stuff, even platform support. So really excited about, this ability to recall across all the different browser tabs you have open, what is actually related to something you're focused on in that current context. I'll give one more demo here and then we can pause for some questions, but I'll go ahead and open up IntelliJ. And I've got a project here. I was actually just doing this demo, but I'll throw a exception inside of this unit test. Throw exception. And this is a demo for the live stream to show the power of the Workstream Pattern Engine. Great. And I'll, of course, add my semicolon. Never fails. But you can see, so here's a bunch of code in this project. You can see this is the testing persistent native semaphores. We've got the file. It's picking up on all this stuff. I don't need the IntelliJ integration. I do have it here. So I have the Pieces Copilot available right inside of IntelliJ and whatnot. But that said, this is happening at the OS level. I actually don't need IntelliJ at all. So I'll run this unit test here. And we should get that error. Okay, great. So we got an exception. It's in this file. It's at these lines. And we ran some stuff here to actually execute it with Dart. So this was the script that I ran, Dart run test, whatever else. So I'll pop over to Pieces. And I can say, what is going on with the error I just got in IntelliJ? And maybe I can say related to a demo for WP. I'll just give it a little bit of a idea because I got a lot of errors earlier in the day. So yeah, I don't have to paste the stack trace. I don't have to paste the code. I don't have to tell it what file it's in or anything like that. It's just going to have the context here. So this is a demo. That's the exception that was thrown. And it's going to kind of give me some suggestions around what I might need to fix. It's going to say, here's the relevant code right before that error is being thrown, which is pretty awesome. And again, I didn't paste this code and then right there it is. That's the exception, right? And then I could say, what's the purpose of this? How is this achieved in this snippet? I can kind of do follow-on questions, but it's pretty incredible that this has so much context in real time, just right inside of Pieces. So I'll go ahead and pause there. Definitely check it out. It's available today across macOS and Windows. Linux is coming, I think, later in the week, if not next week. So doing a lot of work there. And I'll also add, feel free to check out our other models as well. So we got OpenAI, big shout out to Google with Google Gemini, and then a whole bunch of on-device stuff in case you don't want to have an external model processing anything. So yeah, I'll pause there.
That was amazing. It blows my mind every single time. I'm even using it. I mean, I find myself using it every single day. Whether it's, the stand-ups, which is great, like finding out what was I working on yesterday, where can I pick up? You don't need any other tool essentially to kind of keep you on track anymore. Or maybe I was, going through PRs and I couldn't remember exactly where it was, but someone mentioned this link that I needed. It just knows. I've had an exact example of that. So it's amazing.
I love watching demos where there's no bugs.
Yes.
So for me, from my perspective, working at the desktop app, having it run, all these things, I'm praying, please don't have a problem. Please don't have a problem. And thankfully we didn't experience any issues here. And it was phenomenal. I just think that like the power of this thing is wild. I mean, for me, I'll share. Yesterday, I was doing some research. Sometimes I start my day looking at Twitter feeds or LinkedIn feeds, maybe checking out some new tools. And I don't know about you all, but it's very often the case where you find a new tool and you go about your day, and then you're thinking to yourself later, shoot, what was that tool called? And for me, I knew Pieces was kind of watching me and kind of tracking what I was doing. And so I just went right back to Pieces, asked the question, what was this tool called? I know it was related to this. It gives me the name, and then I'm off to the races. So it's a great tool just to kind of have in your corner as a bit of a safety net as you go about your day. So fire.
Yeah, and maybe Mason, one of the things you can do is share the recent kind of video that highlights a lot of this stuff, but it's got a little bit of a sneak peek into again, everything we're releasing up until this June 20th date, where you can not only say I want to leverage live context, but you might want to have like time lapse context, right? And that time lapse could be over a larger period of time, yesterday, last week, last month, whatever else it is. But we really are focused on the Workstream Pattern Engine, based out of a first principle of it's hard to remember everything first and foremost, but it's also hard to even remember that you should take a note or you should save something in that moment of time. You're just jumping around, you're moving quickly. And so you often don't realize like you should have captured it until you realize you didn't. And so the goal there is like building on phase one, which was the last couple of years. Pieces is a great place for humans to save things. Well, now Pieces is a great place for itself to save things for you. And so, yeah, pretty pumped about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You mentioned that, obviously Pieces is going to start saving, but then that next step of what can we do with all of that information, right? So
Right.
There's people, I talk to people in the Discord almost daily, and Pieces is like the only place that some people save items. And that is their mental repository, like knowledge base, if we're talking about Obsidian. And to have that all centralized, that single source of truth, but then having this super powerful engine behind it to be able to leverage, look back and pull different bits of your like past into one like kind of base around a question is amazing. It's just like the brain. It's just how the brain works, So
Yeah,
we're building another Pieces brain.
Yeah, I'm so mind blown every time I see like some of the demos with live context. It's surreal, and I encourage any of our anyone from the audience to also go ahead and put some of their favorite use cases or some ideas of how they may see this working in their workflow. However, there's one that I can't take credit for. I was actually on a call this morning with our chief AI officer, Sam. And he was like, "Yo, Mark, I want to try something out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn some closed captions on our meet here, and then I'm going to see like how the Workstream Pattern Engine goes." And I was like, "Oh, dang, that's a great idea." I haven't got back with him yet to see how it goes, but I mean, think about this: like, God forbid you have to go use the restroom and you're in a call with a couple others, and they carry that conversation on. What were they just talking about? What was everyone just talking about? So just like very quickly being able to get up to speed without having to derail the whole conversation. But that's one I wanted to talk a little bit about as well. But there's many other use cases. But yeah, really exciting stuff here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I will say very excited about some of the stuff that's coming up, especially like in the short term with regards to Copilot chats. I'll just kind of highlight, like, you'll start to feel it become more with become one with the operating system, right? And so, one of the challenges of large language models is that they hallucinate a lot of things. And when you have like complex string sequences like file paths or URLs or whatever else, where they've got numbers and strange characters in them and stuff like that, you might not get a perfect response back from the large language model. However, because we are looking at, your work from multiple different angles, right? From the file path angle, from the network angle, from all the data flows in the operating system, we're able to repair those links. So then, you basically get a response back and it says, hey, this was an error in persistent semaphore test.dart. And that's going to be hyperlinked, right? Where you can click that and open it in Finder, or click that and open it in IntelliJ or whatever else. So it feels like whether you're inside of IntelliJ or inside the desktop app, it'll take you back to where you need to go, right? So super exciting stuff there. Same with web links. It's like, where did I get this snippet, or what was I just researching in the browser related to this error? And it says, hey, this snippet on this page, recall it. Or when it's talking about people and you say, what are people actually up to? It says Bishoy, Caleb and Mac. Those will also be hyperlinked, right? Where it knows those people's personas. So just getting, a lot of enrichment after the generative response, that's going to be really exciting. And then, I would just add as well, on the large language model front and on the pieces getting closer to the OS front, I think integrations will still be important, because integrations are not necessarily to have like verified data, right? We can do a pretty good guesstimation of all that, but actually to take actions on your behalf, right? Where you say, okay, great. Can you send a quick summary of what I was up to this morning in infrastructure channel on GChat? And so you'll see us later in the year start to focus on a reaction as opposed to an ingestion of that data. And so integrations will still have a time and a place for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to bring up a question from Michael in the chat. It's Pieces primarily for teams. It looks like it also could be helpful for the individual, especially for students. Savo, if you want to hit on that.
Sure. Actually, it's the opposite right now. So basically on the back half of the year, past like August and September, we'll really start to focus on the team and enterprise use case, which I'll get into a little bit. But right now, we wanted to build a product that was world-class for like the individual developer, right? And so first and foremost, like I've already got so much going on in my workflow that I couldn't even imagine keeping up with everything Mark's doing and Mac's doing at that level of granularity. So Pieces starts out by saying like, hey, of your sea of tabs and your browser projects, your IDE projects and all the chats you're trying to keep up with, like we triangulate that and make sure it's good to go for you. But in the future, when it comes to like a team environment, the idea is that, if I run into a problem, like an error, and then I go out and I research some links and I talk to some people, I iterate on that code, and then I, make a pull request or whatever. The odds are that someone else across the org or someone else in my team runs into that error again are actually quite high. And so, on the back half of the year, the goal is, are there elements of how I solved a problem when I ran into this error that are relevant to the error that Mark's getting? And can we surface those elements like the links and the projects and the people to Mark so he can basically pick up where I left off? And that's really where the team stuff becomes really super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I wanted to bring up one other one. It's somewhat of a longer one, but mainly just about how, all of these new, PCs are coming out with these souped up, like specific processor units for neural processing, but we're able to do it on, an 8 gigabyte Windows 10, PC laptop. How are we able to do that right now?
Well, considering we haven't filed any patents and our goal is to just move as fast as possible, I don't know how much we can actually disclose. I'm sure my investors would probably be pretty upset, if I just gave everyone the keys to the kingdom. But that said, I would say it is understanding that there is a right tool for the right job. It is not simply about taking a drill like a sledgehammer to something that could use a normal hammer or a screwdriver, right? And so a lot of these companies out there, for every single thing they're running into, they're just like yeeting all this stuff into large language models in the cloud, right? Which requires a lot of processing, things like that. But there is something to be said about cleverness and how far that can go to use on-device embeddings, to use on-device APIs that are native, that are hardware accelerated, and to use like smaller models that are not even language models, but perhaps transformers or other things for the right task at hand. And if you creatively assemble all those together, then you can get a really high performance pipeline. And so, I also liken it to the work that Tesla's doing around a self-driving car. You've got 8 high definition cameras basically giving you a ton of input, and then you've got to run that through some level of processing. If Tesla took the approach where They believed in 5G, which 5G was a lie. Let's all be real. It's still slow as hell. But they believe in 5G, and they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to upload, 1080p or 4K video to the server, wait for it to process and come back. You're going to be sitting at that red light for a lot longer for Tesla to determine, oh, now it's green, I can proceed, right? Or, oh, now it's an empty lane, I can actually do a right on red. And so I think, again, there's a lot to be said around traditional algorithms, micro models, and creative assembly of this stuff, so it can make a device like a 8 GB Windows machine, still work for you. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And then I wanted to bring up one last one, and then we'll start to wrap this up. But mainly just around, Jim asked what our SDKs can do around building external tools, and it's a great point where you can build any of the tools that we have. It may take you quite a while, but you can build these amazing tools with our SDKs that are completely open source. We have documentation around it. We're more than happy to help you build, but it all relies on Pieces OS, and it's such a powerful operating system level platform to build upon. It has an embedded database. It has the embedded LLM, RAG essentially as a service built into it. There's so much that goes into it, so much value there. And we're always looking for, amazing new tools that come up using Pieces. So definitely encourage people to try that out and see what they come up with.
Yeah, I would just add to that statement, basically what Pieces OS does is it is a unification layer across Mac OS, Linux, and Windows that truly extends the operating system, and then kind of beautifully wraps up all this processing and all these capabilities and feature sets into a series of APIs that you can call over localhost or over gRPC, right? And so that means that if you want to build an application, you don't have to figure out how to host a hardware accelerated large language model like Gemma on device. Call the API, pull it down, now it's available, right? You don't have to figure out how to use Gina embeddings or NCS embeddings to map everything into a quadrant database or something. We can do that for you, and it's just a couple of API calls. So certainly worth exploring, and really the opportunities are extensive, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, this has been amazing. I wanted to make sure that we answered all the questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to answer the chat while we're kind of wrapping up here, and we'll definitely get them answered. Of course, yeah, check out all the links that we sent in the chat. We've sent blogs, we've sent our newest videos, check out our YouTube channel. But just a quick wrap up. I want to go around the room and get kind of final thoughts. What you're looking forward to. I know we've mentioned it a few times, but in the latter half of the year, even towards the beginning of next year, what's on the mind of the Pieces team? So yeah, Mac, and then we can go to Mark, and then we'll end with Savo here.
There's a lot. I'm not necessarily going to disclose everything that we're going to be working on. As we talked a little bit about, how Pieces serves the individual developer today, you can very clearly see a nice roadmap into how this starts to expand and starts to add value for a group of developers that are working on a team. And so that to me is exciting for a variety of reasons. One, the features and capabilities and the benefits that it open up are tremendous. Also, two, for us as a company and the growth of our communities, it's also really, really beneficial. And I really look forward to working with a lot of those small teams and hearing how they're using Pieces and some of the benefits that they're having. And then, I guess one hint is just we've basically hinted on it a little bit, but just the proactive nature of Pieces and the direction we're going with the proactive nature of things. And so it's aggregating so much context across your workflow. And as developers, we're doing so much and in such finite amount of times, and that number of things that we're doing is going up and up and up, and the amount of time that we're doing it is going down and down and down. And so there's just so much to manage, and how Pieces can serve as sort of a proactive tool to help you in that flow, help you in that chaos, and really become a better developer that works faster, smarter, and gets the right things at the right time, I think is going to be really, really exciting for us and our community. So I'll leave it there. I'll let others share what's top of mind for them, but those are some things for me.
Yeah, Mac, you stole some of the words right out of my mouth. There's a number of things that I'm really excited about, but I'll just limit it to two. And then, so the first one, we talked a lot about this June 20th date. The first one there is I'm really, really excited about errors and their solutions, and kind of treating those errors as like a first-class citizen within Pieces and in the ecosystem. I really loved the summary of what Sava was saying around, hey, myself in an organization, when I solve a solution, it's likely that someone else is going to have a similar problem, and being able to service that to them. So that kind of leads me to my next point, which is that proactive part of Pieces. And I'm not going to go too in depth on that, but I'm really, really excited about, Pieces being able to surface these things to me when I need it the most. And then one final thing that I noticed in the comments around people were talking about that student use case, specifically with regard to the live context. I see this really awesome use case, and we've chatted about it a bunch of times. But I think too, like an online lecture, turn your closed captions on, ask it, hey, can you go a little bit deeper on this topic? This specific topic we were talking about within this online lecture. That's one case. Another thing too is like a lot of these lectures as a student, like you have slides that correspond to it. So as you're reviewing your slides, as you're studying for exams or using these slides to help you out with your homework, you don't need to copy and paste these slides and put them into Pieces. You can ask about them right there with live context. Which helps you as a student be more efficient, but also learn these topics a lot quicker. Yeah.
Nice. I'll just cap it up. I would say to come full circle, we're on phase 3 here with the Workstream Pattern Engine. It's kind of like, can we identify what's important to you? Right? Can we identify the important things and save them for you, right? So that you don't have to always be thinking about, I'm going to need this later, I'm going to save this, and then take the time to save it and organize it and do all that. On the other half of that is, when do you actually like have something saved, but you don't realize it's saved, and you're not thinking to yourself, oh, let me go find this thing, right? You're either saying like, hey, I'm going to just rewrite this code from scratch, or hey, I'm just going to ask the same question in the infrastructure chat that I asked 4 weeks ago, right? Or whatever else. That's one of my pet peeves. It's like another question getting answered over and over. And so, full circle is, can Pieces not only, proactively identify what might be important in the future, but also retrieve and suggest and kind of give you what's important from the past in the present, right? And I think that is in an unprompted real-time capacity as your context changes, right? As you're in the browser, as you're in the IDE, as you get an error message, whatever else. I think it'll be really, really world-class to see Pieces keeping up with you without you doing anything. And so I think that will really change the way that people leverage Pieces, from a tool that you have to use to a tool that is now doing things for you. And that's going to be the future of a lot of what we build.
Yeah, I love that. I love the kind of switch from us doing all the work to, us supporting it doing more work for us, right? Making ourselves more efficient, using our time more wisely in other aspects throughout our job. But super excited for all of that. Again, we'll hit the June 20th. Make sure that you stay tuned for that. We'll have lots of updates coming around new features, especially product hunt launch, all of that coming June 20th. Also want to shout out, we do have a podcast coming out, which is super exciting. I think that's going to be coming the first or second week of June, that first episode. So that'll be a nice kind of get a little bit more personality through the Pieces team, get to know people a little bit more. So yeah, thank you all. I want to thank especially, our guests, Mac, Mark, and Savo today. Thank you for taking your time. And of course, everybody watching, thank you for staying, engaged. We love the comments, people talking to each other in the chat is amazing. And of course, we will see you next time. So
awesome.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.